Hey my friends, happy to see you again. Today I want to share with you one of my favorite herbs for really working with overwhelm and stress. This is my go-to. This is something that I rely on whenever I feel anxious, whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, whenever I'm overstimulated, which is often, by the way. I rely on Skullcap. In recent years, Skullcap has become one of the most popular herbs for the nervous system in herbal medicine, based on its ability to work with GABA receptor sites and kind of calm down the body, sedate the nerves, and really even the flow of nervous energy throughout the body. This can help work with insomnia, anxiety, tension, depression, and so many other aspects. So this is one that a lot of people are looking at. There's been a lot of studies on it, and it's something that I really have just tuned in for myself and seen profound effects. Now this is in the mint family, and there are 3 main species. Here on the West Coast we've got 2 of them, and then there's a Chinese skullcap, Baikal Skullcap, which is way over on the other side of the world. That one's used completely different, much more for inflammation and for immune system support, antiviral, antimicrobial. The skullcap that we're looking at here is the Marsh Skullcap and the Mad Dog Skullcap, and these are both really meant to help support our nervous system. They've been used from early First Nations traditions as well as European settlers coming over, and they've had a profound effect throughout their use. So I'm here at Innisfree Farm. I thought I'd come and tune into the Scutellaria lateriflora. This is our Mad Dog Skullcap. It's not the one that is native to here, that's the Marsh Skullcap. We see though that the lateriflora, the Mad Dog Skullcap, is the one that most of the studies are done on. Skullcap gets its name because the flowers look like a medieval helmet, and this one, Scutellaria lateriflora, has all the flowers on the one side. Lateriflora means on the side. Skullcap is not that hard to grow, although it does like to have wet feet, hence the Marsh Skullcap, which is a common one here on the West Coast. I find that all along the riverways or kind of marsh edges. It's an easy one to identify with those purple skull cap flowers. And this is where it gets the name skullcap, is that helmet look that it has. They have the classic quality of the square stems, opposite leaves, as well as a serrated leaf that comes out to a fine point. We do see that this flowers around here anyway in August. And even though it has a lot of volatile oils, it doesn't have a lot of smell. It has a bit of a bitter, cooling flavor, and a lot of the active compounds are in its flavonoid groups, just like other mints. But in this case, the flavonoids tend to bind to GABA receptor sites, helping to smooth out the nervous tension within the body and have a sedative and calming effect. This was even studied in lab studies with mice where they did the field study. Many mice don't like to be out in an open field, and when given skullcap, they showed that they were not only able to sit out in the open for longer, but also became more social. I really think skullcap's another one of those herbs that works well for those of us who have gone through a bit of a pandemic in the last few years, those of us who are feeling a little bit socially anxious, awkward, overthinking, overstimulated in our mindscape, and just need to smooth down our nervous system. I tend to like using skullcap in many of my blends. This one's Uplifted Spirits. I find it great for when I'm doing a video like this, where I'm thinking about it a lot, where I'm having to remember all of these different aspects of what I want to share with you, or maybe when I'm going out to present or educate or train or talk, or just even go to a social outing, I tend to rely on skullcap to just help me feel more calm, more grounded, more connected, and just more tuned in. Think of it as smoothing out the currents through the nervous system. So this could be useful for things like nervous spasm. Often things like nervous twitches, degenerative nerve diseases, all these kinds of things are where skullcap really shines. We see when there's a spasm, whether it's in the hands or the body, even nerve pain in the menstrual cycle, skullcap has been a classic use. It's one that also sedates the digestive system. So it's something to help calm down spasm in the digestive system. Often people who think a lot also have spastic digestive tracts. So it's something to really help work with flatulence, gas, pain, all of those kind of things that are nerve related. that tension, right? Just smoothing out the current and helping flow and get rid of that congestion and stagnation that might happen in all kinds of nervous system disorders or just imbalances that happen naturally as we go through our lifetime. I've mentioned the skullcap can be used for nervous system pain and nervous system relaxing and sedative qualities, but really nervous system regeneration is what a lot of people are looking at now. Things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they're looking at skullcap as one of those herbs to potentially support rebuilding and strengthening the nervous system. But because the flavonoids in this herb tend to bind to serotonin receptor sites or potentially bind to those receptor sites, we think that this herb might be one that's really good for depression and working with all of the mental imbalances of the modern age. So not just the degenerative diseases, but actually just the general state of our modern world feeling a little bit of a 50 shades of crazy out there and a little overwhelmed by the marketing, by the messaging, by the stimulation that's all around us. That's why skullcap is a herb that many of us should start to think about when it comes to helping us function in the world. So as this is one of those herbs that works with one of the biggest areas of health that a lot of us are trying to deal with, which is mental health, this has been studied pretty heavily. So one of those human, double-blinded, placebo-controlled studies done to really identify the therapeutic actions of this. Skullcap has a noticeable effect on reducing anxiety and tension and depression, but without impairing cognitive function or energy levels. And this is really what we've been looking for, is to understand, hey, is this going to sedate the body too much? One thing valerian can do sometimes is sedate the body, whereas skullcap's ability to work with insomnia is more about smoothing out the nervous system, as I've said, about calming it down, but not impairing the energy. And this is something I really love about this herb, is I can use it during the daytime or the evening time, and has that same effect on just calming me down, but allowing me to be more present and in my body. I just wanted to take a minute to show you the Chinese skullcap. This is the Baikal Skullcap that's been used for over 2,000 years in Asia, more for those immune and anti-inflammatory qualities and really supporting degenerative diseases, nerve diseases, but also inflammation and antiviral and antibacterial, antimicrobial qualities. Part of the reason I wanted to share this with you is I've actually not had a chance to really tune in with this plant living. I've mostly only seen it as a dried root, and I can see really just from seeing this Chinese skullcap how robust and powerful it is. This would be a plant I would energetically look to work with as medicine. So yeah, nice to see you, nice to connect with you. Very different from our lateriflora. Even though the Chinese or the Baikal Skullcap is not used traditionally for nervous system tension, it has some of those similar qualities in its aerial parts. That one though has 2,000 years of history and actually was one of the major herbs that people were looking at for working with long COVID because of its antiviral qualities and its ability to work with viral load in the system. It's something that we put in our kind of retrovirus formula already. So before I let you go, I want to make sure I share with you a bit about harvesting this plant and how to turn it into medicine and make use of it. So it is the aerial parts of skullcap that we use. We typically like to harvest it either when it's just going into flower, at least that's when I like to harvest it, and or just before flower. The skullcap has been growing here, working its hardest. It has those roots that are coming out. I'm going to take some from the edges. Just really appreciating you, skullcap. Thanks for how you show up, all the benefits you've had for myself and others, and I just really love that you've come along this video and you're going to just share some of your medicine with our folks there online. So typically with aerial parts like this, I like to bunch them and hang them upside down to dry if I'm going to use them as tea. And then I will chop them up once they've dried and use that as tea. I'll often mix this in a kind of a nerve tonic tea with things like milky oats, with passion flower, with wood betony, maybe depending on what type of uplifting, I might add things like holy basil, or if I want it to be calming, I might add chamomile, depending on what I'm looking for. But this one blends well, it plays well with others, we'll say. So even though skullcap is great as a tea, because of the flavonoids in it, I do really like to make this into tincture, and I love to administer it in tincture. I find tincture can really help to pull out those active compounds. So when it comes to making a skullcap tincture, I think fresh is best, and so I like to make this one as a 1 to 2, which is 1 gram of fresh skullcap to 2 milliliters of 75% alcohol. But of course, it's a lot easier to get dried skullcap on the open market. So if you're working with that, you want to make what's called a 1 to 5, which is 1 gram of the dried skullcap to 5 milliliters of around a 40% alcohol. That's about what we need. Let this go for 2 weeks. Shake it around a little bit, agitate it, give it some love, maybe put a little heart on there, give it a kiss, and then press it out, and voila, you got a great tincture that could be used with other tinctures to make a nervine tonic and use skullcap on the daily. As I mentioned, skullcap works well with others, and 2 of the blends that we've made at Harmonic Arts are our Uplifted Spirits, which is the one I like working with, and our Feel Calm. Both of them have a nervous system supportive quality. The Uplifted Spirits is more working on skullcap's capacity to support depression and anxiety and give us more energy by adding things like ashwagandha and seaweed and other supportive quality herbs. Whereas the Feel Calm is more of your nerve tonic for calming down any kind of tension and overwhelm, but also helping us sleep better with things like passion flower and valerian and all those kind of things. So however you like to work with skullcap, I'd love to hear from you. What are your formulas? What are your herbs that go with skullcap? How do you like to pair this one with others? Because I know some of you out there are herb nerds and you've been using this herb for a long time. For those of us who feel overwhelmed, for those of us who have a hard time dealing with tension and anxiety, social awkwardness, depression, insomnia, all kinds of ways in which our nervous system can get congested, whether it's circular thinking or having a hard time dealing with uncomfortable conversations, skullcap can help support us in smoothing out that currency in the nervous system to help us be more embodied, a little more relaxed, a little more grounded, and a little more connected. In this way, this herb helps us become more empowered and authentic in who we really are. All right, hope you enjoyed learning a bit about skullcap with me. Please share in the comments. Please let your friends know that this is one of those herbs that they might want to tune into as well. And we love to share with you all about herbal medicine and deepening that connection to the plant path. So tune into the Herbal Jedi and some of the other videos we have and let us know what you want to hear about next, how you want us to share more about what plants we can really all dive in together and find passion and love around working with herbal medicine. All right, see you all soon.